The asphalt doesn't just lead to a destination. In the dead of night, it leads to things that should have stayed in the shadows. Truckers call it the black dog, a omen of death. But for ordinary drivers, the nightmare takes many forms. A car with no driver. A road that never ends. Tonight, we leave the safety of the cabin. These are 4 true horror stories of drivers who faced the unthinkable on the open road. Buckle up, and whatever you do. My name is Elias. I've been driving delivery vans for about 8 years now, mostly medical supplies, mostly at night. You get used to the quiet, the coffee, and the hum of the tires. People always ask me if I get tired of the night shift, but I actually liked it. No traffic, no noise. Just me and the highway. At least, that's how it used to be. This happened on a Tuesday, around 3 a.m. I was out in the high desert. It was one of those nights where the moon is just a sliver, and the darkness feels thick, almost heavy against the windshield. I was about 4 hours into my route, feeling that familiar fatigue behind my eyes, but I wasn't nodding off. I was sharp. I had to be. These desert roads don't give you second chances. I was cruising at about 65 miles per hour when I saw something move near a cactus. At first, I thought it was just a coyote, but as my high beams hit it, my stomach just dropped. It was a dog, but not like any dog I've ever seen. It was huge, built like a freakish wolf, and its fur was a black so deep it looked like a hole cut out of the night. It was just standing there on the shoulder, watching me. As I got closer, I expected it to bolt. Most animals do. But this thing just stood its ground. When I passed it, I saw its eyes. They weren't reflecting my lights like a normal animal's would. They were glowing from the inside, a nasty, burnt orange color. And the way it moved its head to follow my van, it wasn't smooth. It was twitchy, like a broken machine. I didn't think twice. I floored it. I just wanted to get as much distance between me and that thing as possible. I kept my eyes locked on the road ahead, breathing hard, telling myself it was just a stray, maybe a big lab or something. Just a trick of the light. Then I looked in my side mirror. My heart nearly stopped. That entity was running, and it wasn't falling behind. It was right there, keeping pace with the van at 70 miles per hour. I could see its paws hitting the asphalt, but I couldn't hear them over the wind. It was just this silent, black blur chasing me down. Then the cabin got cold. I mean, ice cold. My heater was on full blast, but I could see my own breath fogging up the glass. My radio started acting up, too just loud, screeching static and a sound like someone whispering my name through a tin can. I was terrified. I looked in the rearview mirror to see if the road was clear so I could pull a U-turn, but then I saw them. Those 2 orange eyes. They weren't outside anymore. They were in the back of my van, staring at me from between the medical crates. I lost it. I slammed on the brakes so hard the van skidded sideways, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and sand. I sat there in the middle of the empty highway, gasping for air, clutching the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I slowly turned around to look into the cargo area. Nothing. It was empty. The crates hadn't even moved, but the smell. It smelled like a wet dog that had been dead for a week. When I got to the depot, I didn't say a word, but the guy at the gate asked me if I'd scraped the guardrail. I walked around to the passenger side and felt the blood drain from my face. There were 3 long, deep gouges in the metal door. They were deep enough to show the shiny steel underneath, like something had tried to claw its way inside while I was driving. I still take that route, but I don't look at the shoulder anymore, and I never, ever check the mirror when I'm alone in the desert. Stories about the black dog have been around for a long time, but they usually end with a crash or a disappearance. What's chilling about Elias's encounter is the physical evidence. When you find claw marks on a steel door, you can't just blame fatigue or highway hypnosis. This wasn't a hallucination. It was a physical encounter with something that shouldn't exist. If you're a driver and you feel that sudden chill in your car, or you see a shadow that moves a bit too fast in your peripheral vision, don't stop. Don't look back. Just keep driving until you see the city lights. Because on the highway, sometimes the shadows are hungry. My name is Marcus, and I'm not the type of guy who scares easily. I've driven through storms, engine failures, and near misses on some of the worst roads in the country. But about a year ago, I had an encounter that changed how I feel about driving alone at night. It was around 2 a.m., and I was on a back highway heading home after a long shift. If you've ever been on those 2-lane roads that cut through the woods, you know the feeling. It's just you, the trees, and the small circle of light from your high beams. The solitude is usually peaceful, but that night, it felt heavy. I noticed a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror. They were far back at first, just 2 white dots in the dark. I didn't think much of it, but within a minute, those lights were right on my bumper. I mean, so close, I couldn't even see the hood of the car behind me. I'm a pretty calm driver, but this guy was being aggressive. I tapped my brakes to signal him to back off, but he didn't budge. He started flashing his lights bright, bluish-white LEDs that turned my entire cabin into a strobe light. It was blinding. I was getting angry now, thinking it was just some kid being a jerk. I decided to pull over slightly onto the shoulder to let him pass. I slowed down, signaling for him to go around. But he didn't pass. He slowed down too, staying exactly 3 feet behind me. My heart started to thud. This wasn't just road rage. It felt like I was being hunted. I floored it, trying to get some distance, but that car stayed glued to me. No matter how fast I went, those lights never flickered, never wobbled. It was like they were locked onto my car by a magnet. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. We were passing under a few old streetlights near a bridge, and for a split second, the cabin of the car behind me was illuminated. The seat was empty. There was no one behind the wheel. No silhouette, no hands on the steering wheel, nothing. Just a car moving at 80 miles per hour, perfectly following my every move. I felt a wave of cold air hit my neck, and the smell of ozone filled my car. My GPS started spinning in circles, and the screen turned a deep, bloody red. I was terrified. I didn't know if I should crash the car or just keep driving until I ran out of gas. Up ahead, I saw a bright 24-hour truck stop. I didn't even slow down. I just yanked the wheel and drifted into the parking lot, nearly hitting a row of parked rigs. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the car, screaming for help. I turned around, expecting to see the car right behind me. But the road was dead silent. The highway was empty. No engine noise, no disappearing taillights. Just darkness. A trucker who was pumping gas walked over and asked if I was okay. I pointed at the road, gasping for air, trying to explain the car that had been chasing me for miles. He looked at my car, then at me, and his face went pale. He didn't say anything. He just pointed at my trunk. There, in the thick dust on the back of my car, were 2 handprints. They weren't human. The fingers were way too long, and the skin texture left behind looked like scales. Something hadn't just been following me. It had been holding on. It took me a long time to start driving at night again. It wasn't out of fear. I just didn't want to feel that dread again. I'd heard some old stories about cars chasing drivers in the early morning, but I never imagined I'd be another victim. Hugs. What Marcus experienced is a classic highway nightmare, but with a terrifying twist. We often worry about who is in the car behind us, but we never stop to think about what happens when the car itself is the entity. In the world of the supernatural, machines can become vessels for things we don't understand. This wasn't just a ghost car. It was a predator using technology to mask its presence. It waited until Marcus was at his most vulnerable point of fatigue to make its move. If you're enjoying the stories, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share them with your friends. And also comment with your impressions. Next time you see a pair of lights following you a little too closely on a deserted road, don't just look at the car. Look at the driver's seat. Because sometimes, the thing chasing you doesn't need a steering wheel to know exactly where you're going. My name is Leo. Last summer, two friends and I decided to take a last-minute road trip. No plans, no maps, just us, an old sedan, and the open road. We felt free, laughing and blasting music, until the sun went down and the solitude of the highway started to feel ... wrong. We were on one of those state roads where there aren't any gas stations for miles. Around 11 p.m., we passed a sign that said, Greenville, 30 miles. I was the driver at the time, and I remember thinking, great, we'll be at a hotel in half an hour. 20 minutes went by, then 30. And then my headlights hit the exact same sign again. Greenville, 30 miles. My friends didn't notice at first. They thought I was just joking around. But 10 minutes later, we passed a fallen oak tree on the shoulder that looked identical to one we had seen miles back. The mood in the car shifted instantly. The music felt too loud, almost irritating. I turned the radio off. Hey, didn't we pass that sign already? Gabe asked from the back seat. I didn't answer. I was staring at the asphalt. I pushed the car to 80 miles per hour, desperate to break the cycle. My eyes were burning from fatigue, but the fear was keeping me wider awake than any coffee ever could. We passed the sign again. Greenville, 30 miles. This time, something was different. A car was parked just past the sign. It was an old model, with its lights off. As we drove by, our eyes locked onto the driver's window. No one was there, but the dome light was on, illuminating an interior that looked like it had been shredded from the inside out. My phone's GPS was completely haywire. The arrow was spinning in circles, and the navigation voice was nothing but a metallic screech. It felt like we had slipped off the map and into some kind of geographical entity, a place where the laws of time did and apply. Panic took over. Turn around, Gabe yelled. I slammed on the brakes, pulled a U-turn, and started driving in the opposite direction. I drove for 10 minutes, sweating, praying to see the lights of a city. My headlights hit something up ahead. My heart stopped. It was the same sign. Greenville, 30 miles. And right after it, the same abandoned car. But now, the driver's side door was wide open. It was an encounter I'll never forget. I didn't stop. I kept driving, crying out of frustration, passing that same sign over and over for 5 straight hours. It felt like we were trapped in a scratched record. It only stopped when the sun began to peek over the horizon. The moment the first ray of light touched the asphalt, the road simply ... changed. The trees looked different, the pavement was newer, and finally, we saw a sign for Greenville just 5 miles away. We got to a diner and sat there, pale and exhausted. The waiter looked at us and said, "You boys look like you've seen a ghost. Did you come in through Route 104? When we nodded, he just shook his head. Sometimes that road decides it doesn't want to let people go. You're lucky the sun came up when it did. At the time, we didn't pay attention to what the waiter said. Only when we arrived at our destination did we start discussing it. How did he know that the sunrise had freed us? On the way home, we stopped at that diner to ask him. We went in and didn't see him. I spoke to the cashier, and we panicked. They didn't have any male waiters, only 2 women. To this day, I don't drive on long trips after sunset, because I know that somewhere out there, that road is still waiting for the next car to trap in its infinite loop. What Leo and his friends experienced is what many call a time slip or a spatial distortion. In the highway horror niche, these reports are more common than you'd think. It's as if certain stretches of road have a memory of their own, or worse, as if they are a living trap. Many people blame this on extreme fatigue, saying the brain creates repetitive patterns to deal with the boredom of the night. But how do you explain everyone in the car seeing the same sign and the same abandoned vehicle? And what about the mail waiter who talked about the sunrise? That was bizarre. This wasn't just a trick of the mind. It was a physical encounter with a place that shouldn't exist. If you ever feel like you've been driving down the same street for too long, or that the road signs have stopped making sense, you might not just be tired. The road might have chosen you to be part of its cycle. Share your opinion in the comments, like the video, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe and become part of the Little Ravens family. My name is Sarah. A few years ago, I was driving cross-country to move for a new job. I had my whole life packed into a small SUV. To save money, I decided to drive through the night. It was a huge mistake. I was somewhere in the Midwest, on a stretch of highway that felt like it hadn't been paved since the 70s. The solitude was intense. No other cars, no gas stations, just the endless cornfields. Around 3:30 a.m., I saw a woman standing by the side of the road. She was wearing a simple sundress, which was weird because it was freezing outside. Now, I'm a cautious driver, and I never pick up strangers. But as I passed her, my car's screen suddenly flickered. The music stopped, replaced by a loud rhythmic thumping sound like a heartbeat. Then, the GPS voice, usually so calm, became a distorted mess of static. It sounded like it was trying to scream a name. I looked in my rearview mirror, and the woman was gone. She didn't walk away. She just wasn't there anymore. 5 miles later, I saw her again. Same dress, same spot by the shoulder. I started to panic. I was doing 75. There was no way she could have gotten ahead of me. I pushed the car faster, my hands shaking on the wheel. Every time I passed a mile marker, the static on the radio got louder. Then, the car's proximity sensors started going off. Beep, beep. The little red warning light on my side mirror was flashing, indicating a car was in my blind spot. I looked over. There was nothing there, just empty darkness. But the sensor kept screaming. Suddenly, the passenger seatbelt warning light came on. I looked to my right. The seat was empty, but the leather was pressed down, as if someone or something was sitting there. I could see the seatbelt being pulled tight by an invisible force. The smell of old, stagnant water filled the cabin. It was so strong I started to gag. I was terrified to look, but I caught a glimpse in the window's reflection. Sitting right next to me was a pale, gray figure. Her hair was matted and wet, covering her face, but I could see her fingers long, thin, and blue from the cold resting on the dashboard. She started to whisper. It wasn't through my ears. It was like the sound was coming from inside my own head. "Why didn't you stop, Sarah?" I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just stared at the road, tears streaming down my face, praying for a gas station, a house, anything with a light. The entity leaned closer, and I felt a freezing breath against my neck. I realized then that the fatigue wasn't my enemy, the road was. Then, just as suddenly as it started, I hit a patch of bright streetlights near a toll booth. The sensors went quiet. The seatbelt clicked back into place. The seat was empty. I pulled over at the first well-lit area I found and stayed there until the sun came up. When I finally got out to stretch, I noticed something on the passenger window. From the inside, the glass was covered in a thick layer of frost. In the middle of the frost, there was a single perfect handprint. Small, like a woman's, but with 5 fingers that were far too long to be human. It was a physical encounter I will carry forever. This story is a perfect example of how the highway can bridge the gap between our world and something else. Sarah wasn't a trucker with a CB radio, but her car's technology, the sensors, the GPS, the seatbelt alarm acted as a conductor for that encounter. We often think of our cars as safe bubbles, but Sarah's experience shows that locks and glass don't mean much to an entity that has decided to hitch a ride. The next time your car's blind spot sensor goes off on a lonely road, don't just assume it's a glitch. Just keep your eyes on the road and pray for the morning. The road is a silver ribbon that connects our world to places we weren't meant to see. Whether you are a long-haul trucker or a solo driver heading home, remember these stories. The fatigue might play tricks on your eyes, but it can't leave claw marks on your door. If you've ever had a strange encounter or a close call during the night shift, share your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Before you go, on the final screen, I've included 2 more videos of the horrors of the roads so you can continue your journey. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It is the only way to ensure you don't miss our next journey into the darkness. Drive safe. Keep your eyes on the road, and whatever you do, never stop for the shadows. See you later, little ravens.